Robert, so great to have the opportunity to speak with you today. You know, fellow Canadian, so it's always wonderful
Oh,
to
that's
have
right.
yes, to have the chance to talk to you about this great film, Stand. My goodness, you know, it's amazing story.
Hmm.
And yes, set in Canada, set in Winnipeg in the early 1900s, but at the end of the day, it's so universal and
Yeah.
it's so relevant today. I want to talk about that first because I think this is a good time for people to see this film.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when the screenplay first came to me and I read it, I thought that the writers had just written it because it was so relevant. And even though it's a period piece, I thought, in writing it, they were talking about obviously the things going on. But they originally wrote the script 15 years ago.
Hmm.
So I was like, wow, sort of history repeating itself, and you see it and you feel it. And as we have, now finished making the movie,
Yeah.
and just watching the times and learning more about the current day union struggles and what they've just gone through, which is partly why they really embraced this movie because it really speaks to an ongoing struggle, and it's kind of shameful in a way to think for 100 years we yes we've had progress, but boy, we do the three steps forward, two steps back,
Yeah.
and this movie, it also speaks to today in terms of relationships because uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you're hearing all about how people are divided on their politics within the family,
Mhm.
and in this story again is a Romeo and Juliet where these two
Yeah.
young people fall in love,
Right.
and because of their differing sort of political view, or at least their families, uh, they also have this chasm to cross over.
Absolutely. And the immigration story too. Like there's
Well,
just so much there, you know?
yes, yes,
Yeah, it's
exactly.
incredible. It's incredible. Listen, being Canadian, I mean, I knew about this, but I
Mhm.
love that you bring it to the forefront, excuse me, and that it is all set in Winnipeg, and that you shot in Winnipeg, which
Yes,
was great. I hope you were there over the summer and not the winter.
I was there for both because we shot it there, and then we came back to do post production there, and
Okay,
it was wintertime.
right.
And boy, in fact, we had to do one reshoot in the winter, and we were brushing snow off the sides of buildings. Yeah, it was not easy.
Well, you spent about what 8 years of your life in like growing up in Winnipeg, or is
No,
that
no, I
correct?
grew up. No, I grew up in Sudbury,
Sudbury.
which
Okay.
is a mining town in
Yeah.
Ontario, northern
Yes.
Ontario. So weather-wise, very similar to Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Serious snow for 8 months out of the year. And I grew up there until I finished high school there, and then I went to Toronto to go to university.
Yeah.
Before parking to Los Angeles.
Yes, I went to York University too, my friend. So
Oh, you did?
yeah, I wonder
Oh,
if we were there around the same time. We could have been,
uh,
you know,
I think I'm a little older than you, so I think I
highly
passed.
unlikely, but
No,
we'll talk
we'll
about
leave,
that after.
we'll leave, right. We'll leave that one.
Now, this was a musical called
Yeah.
Strike. I love that you
Mhm,
call it Stand, and we'll talk about that why you did
mhm.
that in a second because it's the first of all the music, everything. It's so beautiful. Why the stage musical? Um, Obviously you have obstacles when you're making a film and it has to be a little different and everything because it's a grand scale and you're making a big production and everything, but how challenging was it for you to take it and make this into such a big film?
Yeah, it was a challenge on many levels, and I'm sure whenever people adapt a stage musical, they face these challenges.
Yeah.
That one is production numbers, and how do you, when you put them in real life, in real locations, they come off differently. That
Mm,
was the first thing I thought about because I also wanted the script to feel grounded. It's a more serious musical in terms of subject matter, and so when you take people singing on a stage, it's easier to go into that fantasy. But when they're in real brick and mortar streets and you feel that, I wanted us to find a way to recalibrate the songs to also make them feel more real in terms of
right.
how they were being sung and performed, and also making those transitions from spoken word to suddenly singing, so it didn't feel like, and people, one of the compliments I really love about the movie is people say sometimes I almost don't realize they're singing because it
Mm,
seems so organic, the way it flowed through. And a lot of people who don't like musicals will like this movie
yeah.
because it breaks that fourth wall of singing in a way that isn't disruptive. So that was one of the aside from just in any movie where you have big moving parts, like, we have these scenes with hundreds of extras, and all that, and it's period reconstruction,
Right.
and then you have a song on top of that. So
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think, what with the advent of shows like, Hamilton, when you're teaching
mhm,
history, so to speak,
yes,
but when you put it together as a musical, do you think
yeah.
like it's kind of an easier thing to swallow that people well, evidently are really enjoying that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I know Danny, who wrote the original musical with his partner Rick. That was a lot of what he was thinking about because he wanted to tackle this subject matter
Mhm.
for some time, and he found there was a lot of resistance because people thinking, "Oh, we don't want to go there. That's a dark part of our history." But then we
Sure.
tell people, "What about if it's a musical?" And they were like, "Oh, well, okay. That how does that play exactly?" So then, as soon as he wrote a few songs and he let people hear the songs, they were like, "Well, we love hearing this. Like it takes us to a different place, and we can deal with it." And so you're absolutely right. Coming at subject matter like this with a musical, I think makes it far more open to people, and yet the message is still there. You
Yeah.
don't lose the message. The serious stuff is there, but you also, and I hate using the word entertain, but you are entertained.
No, for sure. Yeah.
Even though, like I say, it's serious subject matter, but you're really entertained by it, the songs.
This is a great movie too, I think, to make sure students get this.
Mhm.
Have you thought
Mhm.
about that? And I love the fact too that it being set in Manitoba and Winnipeg, where the Museum of Human Rights is, like, I mean,
Yes.
how perfect
Yes.
is that? You
Oh,
know?
absolutely. The first thing they did when I got to Winnipeg was they had me tour that museum, which is
Amazing.
amazing. And it
Yeah.
really does take you into that world and times before and what's happened. And I think that museum and a lot of what's going on, it's there as an educational purpose. And even though it's set, as I guess all museums have that, they're set in one place. But now with the digital age,
Yes.
we can get the message across, and that's what we'll be doing with this film in a later phase. After it's played and it
Sure.
does all that, we've actually made an arrangement with the museum to make it a portal to schools across North America.
Fabulous.
We've got hundreds of thousands of people signed up for that. So I
Oh,
know that,
that's amazing.
yeah,
That's great,
teachers will be
Robert. Yeah,
utilizing this
I
all.
always love hearing about that. I
Oh
love that,
yeah,
and students, I find, I mean, just growing up myself and always loving musicals, and you know, I, I think it's the
yeah,
best way to get at certain students who may not be able to grasp it, but they might this way.
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, love that. Let's talk a little bit about your casting because you've got a mix of Canadians and Americans and all over, but your
Yes.
lead actors. Well, let's just start with Marshall. He's
Mhm.
wonderful. He's from Winnipeg.
He's from Winnipeg. We didn't even know that while we were casting him. It was because he does that show Glee, or was
Yes,
doing Glee before
did.
it ended,
Yeah.
and so we sort of just I thought he was just an American actor in L.A. And when Danny said to me, "You're not going to believe this break we just got," he's actually not only Canadian, he's from Winnipeg,
Yeah.
and he's back
Wait,
here in town
yeah.
because he wanted to get back to his roots and be close to family. And so for him as well, it was fortuitous that here we are doing a movie that we wanted him right from the start, and it's his town. So he's fantastic.
He's great, so talented, lovely,
Yeah,
good looking guy, but also
and
very
good.
talented and
Yes,
a great voice. And then you have Laura, who
yes,
plays Rebecca. And,
yes.
I watched her on Shameless, and then I'm
Oh,
looking at her so closely in this movie going, is that the same actress? Like,
right.
wow, where does
I
she come
know.
from?
Yeah, I've wanted to work with her for a long time because I'm a huge fan of Shameless,
Yeah,
and I recall, thinking before on the other projects, how can we? I want to get Laura in on this project. So when I found out she sings, I was like, because I didn't know that when I'd watched Shameless,
right.
and so that opportunity just availed itself, and she's so wonderful to work with, and really, I thought embodied that character when you see her as Rebecca.
Did they
So
have
really,
instant chemistry, the two of
oh,
them?
they did,
And their
they did.
duets are beautiful, I have to
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I say, Marshall, he's just a charming guy, so he's just easy to get along with. And Laura, I mean, everyone on set, she just disarms everybody. She's always cheerful on the set. So yeah, they had plenty of chemistry, and you see it on the screen. It really, really plays. And we were also lucky when we got for our Mike Sokolowski, which is Marshall's dad,
Yeah.
Greg Henry, phenomenal actor. He's been around a long time,
Yeah.
and again, people see him in this movie and they go, "We have not seen him do that role," and I think he enjoyed that.
Yeah, yeah, he was really great. And
Yeah,
then last I wanna mention, Lisa Bell.
oh yeah,
Wow. Wow.
she's the big discovery for the film. the big discovery. And it's interesting how her character came about because, I mean, I don't know if you've heard the story, but when the script came to me, the whole cast was all white. There was no one of color in the
Yeah.
cast. And so I said to Danny, you know, I know this history of this time period, and there were certainly a lot of people of color that were around, and indigenous people obviously were there in Winnipeg. And I think we really owe it to the story and the history to put them into the forefront. So Danny and I, we worked on restructuring some storylines, and we came up with Emma, which is Lisa Bell,
Mhm.
and the song "Stand."
Yeah.
Because once we auditioned her, she was such an amazing singer. We were like, okay, Emma's got to have a big song. And now it turns out she sings 4 songs in the movie,
Yeah.
but "Stand," which is the theme song, is Lisa Bell as well. So yeah, it was really exciting that we were able to bring that about, and it worked out beautifully. And I was going to also mention is Gabriel Daniels, who plays Gabriel, the
Mhm.
Métis character, who's a World War I veteran who returns. Again, he was going to be an Irish Canadian, and but you know, again, we really have to look at the Indigenous community had a big role during World War I,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and so I was really excited that Danny and Rick, the other writers, just completely responded to that and said, absolutely, we're going to go that way. And
Yeah.
he's another wonderful discovery, wonderful actor, and it adds a lot of depth to the story.
I love that there's so much diversity in this movie. I
Yeah.
think that that was a really wise choice because when you do look back at the time, and as we were saying
Mhm.
earlier in the interview, now, I mean, it's such a multicultural world that we live in, and
Yes.
it's such, and
Yes.
it's blending. And I think it's really important to show that.
Oh yeah, I mean it's all because that is what we've been for a long time, and we're finally coming around to showing not just diversity, but that these characters have depth.
Yes.
That they're not stereotypes. That there's a lot of depth to these people, and I always said to Danny, our writer, that it's like widening the lens because when he showed me some books from historical books, there were no pictures of people of color in these books. And he's saying, look,
Mhm.
I've done research. And I said, well, the photographer at the time was told, take photos of the important people, but if you widen the lens, you see right there, oh, here's people of color, indigenous people, women activists who weren't getting credit for what they were doing. We made Helen Armstrong, who's a real character. We
Yeah.
put her front and center as well into the story.
Yeah.
Because that's important to widen the lens because it's there. It's not like we're not making it up. They were
Yeah.
just there, but history kind of overlooked it. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
You've given us so many great musical and dance films like Stomp the Yard. I mean, working with some of the people you have worked with over the
yeah,
years,
yeah.
incredible. Like, do you want to continue in this vein or do you want to switch it up a little bit?
Well, that's a good question, and I will switch it up somewhat. I've got a movie called Trouble Sleeping that's going to be coming out in 2021. That's a thriller, something
Oh,
completely different.
can you tell us a
And
little bit about that?
well, Trouble Sleeping. Well, it's an interesting. It's one of those stories that it's set in this house where a psychobiographer has come to the home of this family to do a biography on their dead father,
Okay.
who supposedly killed himself. He was a professor and he'd written a book on suicide. So like, oh, there's the evidence that he
Right.
obviously killed himself. He wrote a book that was very, and but as she does the research, she discovers there's more going on in this house, and it's quite dark and fun. I mean, it's got a sense of humor to it. I like a little humor even in a thriller.
Good stuff. Yeah, I look
Yeah.
forward to that. That's
So
great.
that's I was like Billy Zane plays the professor who supposedly killed himself and is essentially haunting the house. I don't want to give too much away.
No, no, I don't
But
want you to. I don't want you to. Well, that sounds fantastic. Well, listen, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk to you about Stand. Like I say, I really enjoyed it, and I think it's it's just wonderfully done and
oh,
great
thank you.
cast. And yeah, I can't wait for my fellow Canadians to
Yeah.
get a hold of this film. But
Oh,
yeah, I wanted to just thank you for your time, and I really
well,
appreciate it.
I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, anytime. Stay safe and stay healthy, and hopefully we'll get you back in Canada once those borders open. Okay.
Yes, I know. I look forward. All right. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Take
All
care.
right.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye
Bye for now.
bye. Okay.